Kevin Garcia with Fight Hype. I mean, let's get right into it. So, Jaron Ennis versus Emanates Staniones. I got to ask you because I think a hardcore fight fan, somebody who understands what these two fighters bring, would say this is potentially a 50-50 fight. But obviously, Jaron's your guy. How do you see this fight playing out? Do you view it as 50-50 or do you favor Jaron big?
I think that, if you're looking at the Chudazian fight, then it's giving people hope. And, although Tom Brown said, well, we've been chasing this fight, we never received a phone call before for Staniones to fight Boots. We did receive that phone call after the Chudazian fight, and I think it gave people a lot of confidence. If Boots performs like he did against Chudazian, it's a very, very dangerous fight. If he performs to the ability that we believe and know he has, he looks absolutely sensational and announces himself as a pound-for-pound star of the sport. But I love what Staniones brings. What he said there, all gas, no brakes. This guy is relentless, tough, great engine. He's a fantastic fighter. And you're right what you said about hardcore fight fans. Everybody who knows boxing knows that this is not just maybe a 50-50. This is probably the best fight of the year so far. And I think you'll get a tremendous matchup.
Eddie, I got to ask you because I was there yesterday in New York City with
I heard your
question. Thank you.
You actually answered the question in your question, which I thought was very good.
Well, I appreciate that. What did you think about the fact that those two ladies went back and forth and just that whole thing is not normal for them?
Yeah, good. I mean, look, I think there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. No one talks about the fact that we had to give up Amanda Serrano walking second in certain situations at the press conference and the fight and the weigh-in when Katie Taylor is the champion. She's the undisputed champion. We had to come down to 136 pounds for this fight, which is not a problem, by the way, but we still were very cordial in the negotiations, especially when it's 2-0, especially when Katie Taylor is the champion. But more importantly, like you said in your question, the WBC do not allow 3-minute rounds. And if you fight a 3-minute round contest, you will be stripped of your title, right? We ain't getting stripped. We're undisputed. That's the dream of Katie Taylor. So it's not even really, she'd fight 3-minute rounds, she'd fight 5-minute rounds. But the reality is, the rules are, it's 2 minutes. She also made a very valid point. Amanda Serrano has boxed a few 3-minute round fights. They weren't very exciting to watch. I'm telling you, the 2-minute format is exciting. It's all action. 3-minute rounds will actually slow the pace down for women's boxing. And I'm not saying we don't need to keep evolving. I'm not saying at some point we don't have to look at that. But on a platform like that, you've had 2 fights that have been incredible. You don't need to change it. This fight will be incredible. It will be another fight of the year. But make one thing clear. It's 2-0 to Katie Taylor. And it will be 3-0 in July. And when Amanda says, millions of people, everyone saw that I won that fight. No, they didn't. Everyone saw 2 brilliant competitive fights that were like this. They're 6-4 fights, either way. And on both occasions, I thought the judges got it spot on. We're entitled to our opinion, they're entitled to their opinion. But look, they're 2 legends of the sport. It's a tremendous, tremendous fight. And hopefully it can sell out and give it the night that it deserves.
Gotcha.
Eddie, how does it feel? You mentioned the 10,000 here on Saturday night. You did in Philly. How does it feel to have options for a fighter, not just one local place, whether it's a Philly, you have options out in Atlantic City, Philadelphia. Not many fighters can do that.
And I tell you what, it's not just Philly and Atlantic City. I think this works for Jaron in New York, in Atlanta. And you look at the success that Gervonta Davis has had. I mean, look, we don't always get on, but Gervonta Davis is a huge ticket seller. And he's proven that in Vegas, in the Barclays Center, in Atlanta, and Boots can do the same as well. And, for me, it was a little bit of a risk when we decided not to do this fight in Philly. I feel that sometimes, I love homecomings, right? But sometimes as a fighter, it's a huge amount of pressure to keep fighting at home. And although this is an hour away or an hour and a half away, I just felt that we needed something a little bit different. I've wanted to do a fight at the Ball Call. Tom reminded me, I was here when Froch fought Andre Ward. I was here when Darren Barker fought Martinez, when Gavin Rees fought Adrian Broner. And every time I looked around the place, it's steeped in history. And this fight deserves a venue like this. And I think it's a major moment for the sport to bring a packed house back to Atlantic City. and hopefully, we can bring big fights here in the future.
Well, I was going to ask, do you think this is the fight that can resurrect Atlantic City back to the glory days?
Honestly, I think that some people forget this place even exists as a fight venue. Right? I mean, you've got, I know during the week sometimes it can be a little bit quiet, but this place lights up at the weekend. Look at the facilities you've got. It's kind of like a Vegas experience. You've got theatres like this. You can do the weigh-in here tomorrow. You've got the boardwalk hall. You've got other arenas as well that are a little bit smaller if you need them. And we know, look, fight fans in New Jersey and around the areas are very knowledgeable people. They know great fights, and that's why they're coming on Saturday, because it's a great fight.
Eddie, what do you make of Jake Paul's comments about his call with Anthony Joshua that he said yesterday? And I mean, provide some clarity on that situation that he said maybe next year could happen. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they had a conversation. I know they did, and they probably said, yeah, we'll fight next year. And AJ went, cool. And that was probably it. I mean, on one hand, Jake Paul's talking about fighting Gervonta Davis, who's 135 pounds. And then on the other hand, he's talking about fighting a 260 pound monster in Anthony Joshua. Listen, he's crazy enough to probably do it all if the money's right. But we're not really interested in waiting until 2016. And we're certainly not basing our career around a potential fight with Jake Paul. But if we were offered it, why not? I mean, it would be such an easy night's work, and it would be massive. And Jake's smart. Look, I know that we have our back and forth. Jake's improving as a fighter, and you have to respect the fact that he's dedicated not just to the business, but also to the hard graft of boxing. I still don't think he's particularly good, but he's a decent, some level fighter. But he's crazy. At first, I always felt that Jake was just using these people's names. I think he's got that many people around him that I wouldn't be surprised if he thinks he's got a chance against Anthony Joshua. Jake, I watched him, Jake. You'll knock him out. Yeah. It's like, but, there's a difference between fighting Gervonta Davis, even Canelo Alvarez, and then fighting AJ. The other two you can get just humiliated and schooled and beaten up a little bit. The other one you can be fully decapitated in. So you've got to be careful and you've got to be smart. And I know you want the money, I know you want the big moments, but this ain't a game. And that's a fight. If AJ hits Jake Paul like he hit Francis Ngannou, I don't even want to joke about it. I mean, this is a very dangerous sport.
Eddie, just wanted you to clarify the whole Beterbiev situation. Obviously, Benavidez was crowned champion by the WBC. They vacated Bivol's title. What are your thoughts around that whole situation?
Very straightforward. We have a contract, and more importantly, we gave our word that we will fight Beterbiev again. His Excellency has done a tremendous job for Dmitry Bivol. We've had 4 fights in the kingdom. When we lost a very close fight against Artur Beterbiev, His Excellency went out and made the rematch when he didn't have to. And part of that deal was, if we win, there'll be a third fight for Artur Beterbiev. So I was very surprised at the speed of the order. Don't forget, Dmitry Bivol had only just won the WBC title. You always get grace as a champion. It wasn't like this was ordered way back and, Benavidez has been waiting. He only just beat Morel, and it's like, right, boom, negotiations, boom, purse bid, boom, telling people the public offer. I mean, when has there ever been a time where, someone from the organisation is publicly telling about the offer that Dmitry Bivol would receive? It's quite bizarre, actually. And it's like trying to put pressure on him to take the fight. The money's nowhere near the money that he's going to make to fight Beterbiev, but it doesn't matter if the offer was 20 million. We have a contract, and we also have our word, which is our bond, which we don't ever go against. And we will be taking the third fight, and we will be fighting with His Excellency because he's given Dmitry the greatest opportunity. And by the way, in my opinion, and it's very difficult for Maurizio and the WBC because you're under a huge amount of pressure from all different parties pushing, and it's very important that the greatest fights in the sport are allowed, and they supersede sometimes a mandatory obligation. For me, Bivol Beterbiev is the greatest fight in the division. We've seen 2 of the best fights I've ever seen. Why wouldn't you allow the third for undisputed? But look, everybody's got their rules. We are where we are. We're talking now to Louis de Cubas about David Benavidez against Callum Smith. I think it's a tremendous fight. Callum Smith's the WBO interim champion. He's also mandatory. And I guess we'll make that fight, hopefully. And then we look forward to Bivol against Beterbiev 3.
you have a lot of fighters calling Jaron Ennis' name. Whether it's Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia, Brian Norman Jr. With Shakur Stevenson taking step aside money and being the mandatory, is it a chance that we get those other fights, or is it definitely going to be?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's difficult because we represent Shakur, right, as well. And he kindly, a bit like what I said there, he understood the size of this fight for the sport, right? So, he now has the winner. So, is there an opportunity to fight Brian Norman? And Shakram waits again? It's difficult, because it's like he's got his shot. It's not like, and we got to provide him with an opportunity as well. So the answer to your question is I don't know, but I do know that originally we were looking at Boots maybe moving to 54 at some point. If he wins on Saturday night, I think he's going to want to win the lot. I mean, I'm hearing rumours about Barrios against Pacquiao. I mean, what is that for the WBC title? I mean, what is that? But Brian Norman, for me, is the fight. That, for me, is a brilliant fight. But we got to get past that. This is the toughest fight in the division. So if we get through, we're unified, number one, and then we'll see what's next.
Eddie, AC Mike W.
Yeah, thanks for the slot this morning. Great.
Love to have you on this morning. We appreciate you. Being from the area, East Coast, Philly, Atlantic City now permanently, Hopkins, Sergio, 2011, 12. We've touched on the hall, what it's meant, the convention center, the audience that's going to be coming down. Iconic, 1929, everything from Miss America to helicopters flying, now what you're doing, bringing it back. Again, do you see that coming? And I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Is this something that could be revisited down the road?
Look, when you have the history that you have here, it's not difficult. I can go up there and I can talk about all the great names that have been there, all the great fights that we've had. And this is another one that I think will sit alongside those fights in the history book. So for a long time, Atlantic City was a hotbed for huge names and major championship fights. So why shouldn't it be? Now, when you look at iconic venues for boxing in America, you can name them on one hand. Madison Square Garden, MGM Grand. I mean, I know you got the Cowboys. It's not really a boxing venue, but we've done big fights there as well. But really, talk about boxing venues. This is like top 5, top 3. So you'll see on Saturday night, you'll see the crowd, and sometimes, obviously, it's great when you do a show and you say massive crowd coming, and sometimes it's kind of massive, but it's not quite massive. Saturday, you'll see with your own eyes. And there'll still be people in boxing, because it's full of bullshit and lies, where people will be going, yeah, oh, I bet they've only done 4,000. Watch. Completely, we're still selling. But come Saturday, this will be completely full up. And everyone will go, fuck me, wow.
To piggyback on that real quick, working with Visit Atlantic City, Gary, the guys and the gals, how would that go? Because
when you work with a venue, if you've got a partner that actually cares and pushes with you collectively, you can really make it work. I mean, we've got partners like OVG, all these big venue companies that work with you. Sal and the team at MSG, they get it, right? They really, the Dallas Cowboys team, the Star, they want to make it a success. And those guys have worked just as hard as we've worked, and they're proud. Gary and Jim came up to me and said, oh, we can't wait, and they will walk around on Saturday night and go, fuck, we're back, baby, and I can't wait.
Can you elaborate about Shakur Stevenson? He said that the number of negotiations with Zepeda were a little low.
Excuse me. We had a deal with His Excellency to have one fight and then fight Zepeda. Now that fight was supposed to take place in Saudi. Now the fight was potentially taking place in New York, and the numbers changed. It's not a fight in Saudi. So they came back with proposed numbers which were different to the original proposed numbers, and Shakur let his feelings know. And now negotiations have begun. The WBC have made the order for those negotiations between Shakur and Zepeda. We're talking with Eric Gomez. We're talking with Oscar de la Hoya about doing that fight together, potentially even doing a Matchroom v Golden Boy 5v5. I think would be huge. And the Zone, which are our mutual broadcaster as well, and it's a brilliant fight. Like Shakur needs that kind of fight before he fights Tank, because that's the fight. If he fights Zepeda, the only fight left for Shakur is Tank, and that's a fight that we should make at the end of 2025.
Speaking of massive events, we have Conor Benn versus Eubank coming really soon. Can you just talk about
the magnitude of 65,000 people, at Spurs, Tottenham Hotspur. I mean, you have to think about their fathers. It was the biggest, deepest rivalry in the history of British boxing, right? And now their sons, who are both world ranked in the top 15, Conor in the top 5 in most, are fighting each other. The sons, right? And like they are ready to fight each other now here, and like the build-up's been huge. It's a massive event. It's going to do huge pay-per-view numbers. And what is it? Two weeks away on Saturday. Unbelievable how quick it's come around.
And Turkey said that a possibility that Canelo might fight the winner. How true is that?
Yeah, for Conor, look, Conor middleweight is a big jump, right? In fact, the only reason this fight is a 50-50 is because of the weight. For me, Conor's younger, fresher, better puncher, better technician, more skill, better footwork. But he's at a big weight disadvantage. So to move to 168 against a big, strong 168 pounder, it's a big jump. But listen, we'll see how he gets on at 160. And first things first, let's beat Eubank on April 26th.
If he is successful, is he going to move back to 47?
I think so. It's very difficult to move back. I remember when Kell Brook fought Golovkin and then wanted to defend against Errol Spence. It was brutal for him to get back down at 47. So we'll see. I mean, I always felt that 54 would be a place that Conor ends up. But, I believe he can beat Barrios, and those kind of fighters. So we want to win a world title, but we've got to make the big step up first, April 26th.
Eddie, you mentioned something a second ago, 5v5 versus Golden Boy. And speaking about Golden Boy, I had to get your thoughts. Did you see Oscar's most recent version of his clapback?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on,
look, I don't know. Are we friends now? I don't know. Like, when I'm friends with him and I'm watching it, I find it's quite funny. And then when he's, when you're on the receiving end, it's like, And I don't know. Look, Oscar is always going to speak his mind, and I think that. I think by doing that, I think he's got another one as well, isn't he? Fuck.
This the podcast with
what
Ali?
Yeah.
I forget the name, but yeah, it's new.
What the fuck? Is it or something like that?
Something along those lines.
I actually really like that. Like, I was watching it. That's a really good segment about his fights and stories from the fights that he was involved with. I think that sometimes, although we've had our differences over the years, one thing he will always be is one of the greatest fighters that ever lived. So I think sometimes we forget that he fought Mayweather and, he fought all these incredible fights. And when you're listening to the stories are, from the horse's mouth. And I think that when you talk about content, like, you've got to keep innovating and you've got to keep doing different kind of stuff. Now, whether that's clapback or what the fuck or whatever it is, at least he's doing it, something. Like, some promoters are just so fucking lazy and they're not just doing anything. They rock up every now and again. I think his profile as a promoter is grown off the back of that content, and so it should. And, we've found a way through His Excellency to kind of get our heads together. And I think the future for Matchroom and Golden Boy working together on DAZN is really exciting. Like, I think we're in a place now where we can have regular conversations. I think despite our differences over the years, one thing we both have is an incredible passion for boxing. We love boxing and we want to make great fights. And right now, I see the opportunity between Matchroom and Golden Boy to make great fights. I think, if it was the relationship that was in the past, we'd never make Stevenson against Zepeda. But now we're saying not just Stevenson against Zepeda, what can we make on the undercard? And yeah, look, for now, it's enjoyable, and I hope that it can continue because I want to enjoy it. Like, as I found with Frank Warren, it's like sometimes it's draining. And you'll never quit because we'll fight to the end. But like, it can be a lot more enjoyable, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And I'm enjoying a relationship with Frank Warren. I'm enjoying a relationship with Golden Boy, and hopefully it can bring the big fights together.
Just one follow-up question on the topic. Do you think there's any issue in what Oscar's saying about TKO based on the fact that he has a relationship with Turkey and that's another business of Turkey's? Or is that, do you think Turkey interprets it as just like content, whatever?
What's the question?
So he's talking about TKO disparagingly, and that's a Turkey business. So the question is, do you think it can impact Oscar, or if it's wise?
Well, Oscar's going to speak his mind. You're never going to, control Oscar in that respect. He's going to speak his mind. Obviously, he has his differences with Dana White. TKO, you know, look, I think TKO's good for boxing because you know what? Probably giving me a kick up the arse. Probably giving Oscar a kick up the arse. Warren a kick, go fuck, right, yeah? Okay, you want to come into our space? Let's go, motherfucker. Do you know what I mean? But that's the reality. You've got to understand what we are like. I mean, he's a former fighter, so you know he's a competitor. But people like me and Warren, we're fucking winners, mate. We don't let anyone come in and take liberties and think they can come in and start coming into our space without a fight. It's not like that because I have a great relationship with Dana. We've got a relationship with Turkey, and hopefully we can work together. But what I'm saying is, if the aim is to drive out the likes of me and Warren and Oscar, fucking bring a fucking army, right? And bring 24/7 artillery. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I know to make it in this sport, you've got to put up with so much fucking shit. Right, every single day, and it's tiring and it's draining. And if you ain't up for the fight, you ain't gonna, you know. And it's not you can never be in control in this industry because the industry is out of control. And TKO, or you know, the UFC or what, Endeavor, whatever you want to call it, is a business based out of control. Right? They control the talent. Everyone's in order. Everyone knows what they've got to do. I don't want to say do as you're told, but look, you know, there is an element of that. Mate, in boxing, you couldn't be further away from that ever happening. When you go to sleep at night, when you wake up in the morning, nothing is ever the same. And the minute you think you can control that space and what you're doing is the minute you make the biggest mistake, because it ain't ever going to happen. But I will say, Dana White in boxing is great for boxing. Great for boxing. More attention, more eyeballs. And ask yourself why. Why is that company looking to get involved in boxing? Because it's red fucking hot. At the moment, boxing much bigger than MMA, much bigger than UFC. The big fights continue to happen. The digital conversations and narrative are on another level. The ecosystem of boxing. We're seeing, you know, ticket sales this Saturday. You know, Tottenham in a couple of weeks, 65,000. Do you know what I mean? Boxing is red hot, and we're all up for the fight.
Thank you, Eddie.
Eddie, one question from me. Could we get a possible timeline on the trilogy with Beterbiev and Bivol?
I think Riyadh season begins at the end of September, early October, so I think that's a realistic fight. Obviously, we'll be led by His Excellency's decision as to when. But, you know, Dmitry would be ready back end of the summer, so we'll wait for the call.
Yes, sir. And then the WBC president stated that Bivol made $2.75 million for his fight versus Beterbiev, and he's confused on why he would turn down $8 million versus Benavidez.
No comment on that one, but I'll let anyone with common sense think about the possible numbers.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.